Hello, if there's anybody there. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties setting up my phone, so I'm like 4 minutes late. I hope you can hear me. Let's just get the chat open. Turn it. Hey, Julian. Whoa. Nice to see you too, man. How are you doing? Okay, I think we're all good now. I have such a dodgy setup balancing my phone against my laptop on a box, and sometimes I just can't get the angle right for it to balance. It's like just kept on falling over. So that's probably the hardest part about doing these live streams is getting the camera in the right position. I'm gonna have to upgrade my equipment at some point. All right, though, welcome to everybody who's here so far. Looks like there's 3 people, probably -1. Oh, it's going up. There we go. Yeah, so welcome. Come ask some questions. Anything really on the topics of chronic illness recovery, meditation, awakening, whatever you want to talk about. If you want me to specifically touch on, do like a longer talk about anything specifically, that's cool too. So anything goes, really. There's no rules here. Should be careful what I say there. Julian, to be honest, it's a tough day for me. I have been at the prime nose doctor of Germany, and he couldn't give me big hope for my taste and smell recovery. He said they don't know the problem and have no therapies. I always hoped that there is a connection between taste and smell and other CFS symptoms. Sorry to hear that, Julian. Yeah, that sounds like a tough day. It's always disappointing when going to see a new specialist that you haven't before. There's always a lot of hope that comes with that this is finally going to sort things out. And yeah, it's often the case that they just don't have the understanding. I mean, that's kind of the case for everybody with chronic fatigue syndrome is you go to a million specialists and it's always the same of not understanding. So what I would say is, I know we've spoken about this before, obviously I'm not a specialist on nose and taste and smell and all of that, but I would say there's a strong possibility that it is linked with the other CFS symptoms, that it is a nervous system thing as well. Yeah, I strongly suspect that it is the case. I know of other people who it's just another one of the symptoms. The symptoms vary from person to person. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. As I said, we've spoken about this, me and you, before. So, yeah, but it's always, it's always tough when you have hope that something's going to work and it doesn't. But yeah, I would kind of use that as an opportunity. Like it's difficult, it's disappointing and all of that, but I would try to use that opportunity to, again, work through what it brings up, and be really kind to yourself and compassionate. It's not, it's okay. Like if it makes you really disappointed and it makes you feel really hopeless and scared and whatever, then that's fine. Let yourself feel that. Don't think that, oh, I must do something to not feel this. Oh, I must be, I must be brave. I must, I must fight this. Like, that is a key part of this journey, is being willing to, because we get caught up in the response. We feel like we have to respond to the difficult stuff that comes up. It's so easy to get caught in that. Like, just from my personal experience, it's like, okay, should I do this or this? Like, which is the right decision? But sometimes what you need to feel, the decisions doesn't matter. Sometimes indecision is what needs to be felt. Like, this situation is bringing up confusion and indecision in me. And instead of because what we're trying to do when we're trying to find the right answer, the right solution, is we're trying to make indecision or confusion go away. So it's an incredible, like it's so easy to get caught up in that. But when you can realize that, oh shit, like I don't need to do something to make this go away. Sometimes, so it's like, should I do this or should I do that? Or maybe I should just, like, this is from my personal experience. Like, that was one that I got caught on for a while. It was like, oh, I just need to feel indecision, and then go with that deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's the same with this situation. It's not what you wanted to happen, but the work that I'm sharing that helped me to recover, and that is really powerful, deep inner work, is, that's going to happen. Whereas what we thought we actually needed isn't going to happen, and it's going to bring up something that we actually need to feel. Because we can't control what's going to happen. So, life plays out, and then it brings up these things, and then we're like, okay, I need to do something so I don't have to feel this. So in that situation of, whatever that brings up, do it from a place of kindness and compassion, and be like, okay, it's okay, I can feel this. If I want to break down because I'm feeling hopeless, that's fine. Like, just let yourself feel it. And it's what you need to do. Like, and it's, yeah. So yeah, let yourself feel it, and just really, what's key when doing this kind of thing is to really try and just feel more and more and more. Like, notice the thoughts that come with it. Like, oh no, but I'm never gonna, have my taste and smell back, and I'm so afraid of that. That's the thought about the feeling. So again, just like, okay, that's the thought, and then, okay, what does that feel like? And again, it's good. Like, we need that. We need to bring that out and feel it, and just stay with it. Like, that's the key. Just stay with that feeling, deeper and deeper, and yeah, just it's that simple, but it's tough, as I say. Okay, let's just see what else Julian said. I hope this too, man. I hope you're right. I also realize that it got better when I feel better. But anyways, I have to face the sadness. Exactly. It's never actually about what the mind is saying it's about. Like, when there's sadness that needs to be felt, it's going to come up in a story, and often life is going to trigger the sadness to come up. But it doesn't really matter in the end what the story is. It's just, that's what you've got to face. And it's going to happen a lot on the recovery journey with the ups and downs. And it's key. Whenever we think, oh yes, like I've made it, I don't have to face any of that scary stuff again, it's going to come up again, because now we're starting to resist again. Now we're starting to cling to one set of experiences as opposed to another set of experiences. Whereas in the end, recovery, or going deeper, getting to the root of your suffering, awakening, is about not controlling experiences. It's about accepting whatever comes up and just letting experience. Yeah, it's just deep acceptance of what happens as it unfolds, and then it's not really a problem anymore. But you have to face the uncomfortable stuff, and it kind of dissolves the resistance patterns, and there's a lot of habit force to I'll try to fight certain experiences. So that's why it's not about understanding this intellectually, like, oh, okay, just don't resist anything, just accept life as it happens. That's not going to help. I mean, it will help initially, but what one really needs to do is actually practice feeling the uncomfortable stuff. Like that's all that matters in the end. A lot of people get stuck in the intellectual, and I think we're all going to on this path. Like myself, I was stuck there for a long time until I was like, yeah, I actually have to do the work. So yeah, that's not speaking directly to Julian there, just in general. Glad it helped, Julian. Yeah, good luck. The speaking channel, welcome. Do you have a belief that things happen for a purpose, i.e. being ill, faith type stuff? That's a good question. So I'll be honest with you, like a year or so back when I was going through all of this, I went through quite a very hard materialistic perspective. So that it was just kind of, in the end, it was a result of the stuff that was, the emotions that I was feeling and all of that, and it brought up a lot of heavy emotions and that kind of stuff. So, very there's just how do I put it? The hardcore atheist perspective of there's just the hardcore determinism. There's just what's happening, and it's trying to think of a good way to put it. Whatever, it's just all just luck. It's all luck. Like some people are lucky and some people are unlucky, and it's there's nothing to it. And that's a very difficult place to live from. But it was kind of a part of the phase. So I was letting go of beliefs, and then I got to that place, and then realizing that. So to answer your question more directly, it's not really about beliefs for me anymore. It's about realizing that there's no individual me who has control over life. There's just life. So it's a trust in life. So for different people, that faith can what they say they have their faith in can be different, and that's fine. So for some people it's a religion or a god or something like that, or the universe. But kind of realizing that you're not in control really. This whole thing that's happening, you didn't make it happen. So to go back, I kind of had that perspective a while back, but from a very hopeless perspective of there's no me, there's no one making this happen. It's I'm doomed. But that was because I was repressing so much stuff. So that's what I always say. The story doesn't actually matter. It's about what I didn't want to face. I was in a really depressed state, and that was rock bottom for me. I was I have no, I've tried so hard to recover from this. I keep crashing. It keeps getting worse, and then it was going through that phase. But what it really is it's the deep stuff coming up, and I was fighting it, so it was kind of staying there, and I was stuck in this place until I realized, a bunch of things kind of changed, and I've spoken about it on my channel. But from the perspective I see it now, it's kind of really clear that this whole illness, it wasn't separate from this whole awakening process that I talk about. It was it was just life waking me up, I suppose. It's kind of makes sense from my perspective now that it was going to happen. It was I had been running from so much stuff throughout my life. I was so much in my thoughts, so identified with my thoughts, and so fighting uncomfortable experiences, so much repression, so much resistance. But I was so identified with my thoughts that I didn't even know this, right? It was so unconscious. And then, a couple of these situations happened, it's something tragedy strikes, or like for me it was like illness, and then because of the mind state I was in that I didn't even know I was in, that was it. Just this was just how it was going to unravel, and it kind of like, as I've spoken before, like drove the whole symptom cycle. Like the fear and reaction to symptoms ramped up the nervous system, so it produced more symptoms, which produced more resistance and stress and fear, which affected the nervous system, blah, blah, blah. So I kind of all had to like fall apart before I was able to find my way out of it. And yeah, looking back on it now, it was like, it kind of happened for a purpose. Like there's different ways to say it. But yeah, it kind of had to happen. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, it's kind of like, from my perspective now, like realizing that this is just like the universe waking itself up, if that makes sense. If people are at different stages on this path, it's like going to make, speaking in certain ways is not going to make sense. But once you go deeper and deeper with self-inquiry and those kind of practices, and you start to, the identity starts to unravel, and you start to see that there's not really a separate self, then you see there's just life happening, and everything is happening as it needs to happen. Not sure how that comes across to people at different stages, but that's my answer. Ivan, so what do you think actually healed you, by the way, that when you awakened, your nervous system has profoundly calmed down? So I don't really think of awakening as the way I talk about it. Like I just kind of touch on the subject a little bit here. More as like a process of coming out of the thoughts and the reactions, and more just becoming conscious of the unconscious behaviors that were driving everything, and you kind of become more, and it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. So it's everything that I talk about, like sorry, just scroll down there. Your nervous system has finally calmed down. Yeah, it's like working, like the whole process is calming the nervous system, because it was all the reactions and the beliefs and the thoughts that were driving the nervous system. So there's kind of like two aspects. I mean, there's so many different aspects to that. I was thinking back today of like all the different stages on my path and the different things I was doing. But in the end, to put it all into one approach, what was key was becoming more aware of my reactions and becoming more willing to feel stuff without reacting to it. And there's different things that are going to be helpful along this path. And some of the uncomfortable stuff just needed to come up. So it was, yeah, it was like the ability to feel what came up without reacting to it with fear and fighting it and beliefs of, you know, oh, I'm never going to recover. This is so dangerous. Like all of that could be seen eventually as thoughts, and I can drop the thoughts and just feel into what's here. And then it's not feeling it anymore. Then when you can just feel what's here, it kind of relaxes on its own. But the key is always, can I feel what's here without trying to change it? Because that's resistance still. So that's kind of the broad thing of, yeah, the nervous system calms down. But like for me now, if the nervous system flares up, there's different ways to talk about it. Like when you're doing a lot of deep meditation and really inquiring deeply, interesting stuff starts happening. Like I have these really like, it's like weird energetic stuff, like just, yeah, it's difficult to talk about. But in my looking back, if that had just happened to me and I wasn't meditating at all, it would have felt like what a lot of people experience with long COVID and that, where it's like, oh my gosh, like heart palpitations and you know, can't sleep and like this wired nervous system. But for me now, there's no labels on it anymore. It's just like, that's just kind of like something that needs to pass through. And again, like once you're digging, like there's nothing to do with chronic illness anymore. So there's no fear of like, oh no, what does this mean? What can I do? What can't I do? It's nothing like that. It's like, there's just something that needs to be felt. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful. But yeah, in the end, it was really about dropping beliefs and being willing to feel things, because it was the belief in the thoughts that was keeping me stuck. Like something would come up, and then the thoughts were like, "Oh, this is a symptom, and it means that this is going to happen, and I'm really sick, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and all of that." So that's why I really recommend meditation and similar practices twofold. The one is that, yes, it helps to calm the mind and the body. Like, that's very helpful for the symptoms and relaxing the body. But the more powerful practice, which actually matters in the end, is being able to see that the thoughts are not you. And that's what you'd call awakening. Like, initial awakening. Like, the whole awakening process just means like becoming more... it goes really deep, and I'm not like the right person to... Like, Angelo DeLulo is a really good person to talk about awakening more in detail. I just kind of touch into it because it was a massive part of my recovery. But yeah, that's why like something like meditation, it calms the nervous system, but what was more important for me is it kind of gets at the identities and the belief in the thoughts. So, okay, like it's all this narrative, this story about what's happening. That's what's keeping me stuck. What's happening right now, like the pure experience of symptom, if that was what was happening, what was making me suffer was the belief about what the symptom meant in the past and the future. So, oh no, I'm going to be stuck for another 10, 20 years, like all of that kind of stuff. That was where my suffering was at, all in thoughts, which were absolute nonsense because like I had no idea where I was going to be 6 months down the line. And just to prove that, like I thought, oh no, I'm going to be stuck like this forever. And then full recovery happened a while later. But because of the process that happened, like somebody just waiting around for recovery to spontaneously happen, that's resisting doing the work. So yeah, if I could just feel into what is here and then notice that's a thought, that's not what's here right now. Like this symptom, oh, this symptom means this and this. Nope, that's not what's here, that's a thought. What's here is just the pure experience of symptom. But it's like that's why meditation and other practices are helpful to get you to that place, because a lot of us initially are so caught up in the thoughts, it's almost impossible to feel the symptom without the thoughts. It feels like one and the same. But the more you do these kind of practices, you can kind of experience that. So yeah, that would kind of be my overall answer there. Jessica Lee. Hey, Jessica. How do you deal with online negativity and their lack of faith with making a recovery on certain Facebook and Reddit forums? Cool, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a really good question because it's a massive part of this. It's a massive part of this. Like fueling a lot of this is all of the stuff online on the forums. As a part of the process, I would say like how we deal with that. So to just speak from how I dealt with it, eventually, like you just got to, or speaking from my own perspective, everybody can do what they want, but you just got to let go of. Eventually, I just stopped, I left those forums and those Facebook groups and stuff. But I'm going to go into that another perspective on it now as well. But yeah, like initially that what it is still, just from how I was doing it, was avoidance of feeling what's here. So I'd be feeling symptoms and then it's like, okay, I'm going to go scroll through these Reddit forums and hopefully come up with something or whatever, and it wouldn't help. So eventually, when I was far along in the process where I had so many crashes and I'd hit rock bottom already, and I was like, I know I need to take responsibility for my recovery here, and I need to be honest with myself. And I knew that sitting and meditating or feeling into the body or doing a yoga nidra or practice like that would help me, and going onto like a forum would make me worse. So eventually I just kind of gave it up. Just kind of left it, and then I found Raylan Eagle's channel, or I kind of found that earlier, and if I did want some recovery perspectives, I would watch a recovery video, but I stayed off the Reddit forum, I stayed off the Facebook groups, and yeah, completely. Until at a later stage, like not that I went back onto the forums, but I was able to read through that kind of stuff and it didn't affect me, because what the problem is once you've faced what that brings up, so kind of what I was just talking a little bit earlier about is there's so much fear there, there's so much doubt. Doubt is a huge part of it, is it's, I don't think I'm going to recover. It's fear and doubt. Okay, if you can just start to feel into that instead of reacting to it. So again, it's the thoughts versus what you're actually feeling of there's, I'm never going to recover. All these people, they're so, there's so much negativity, all of that. That's the thoughts. What does it bring up in you? Like, why is it a problem? Like, again, and don't come up with a thought answer for it. Why is it a problem? Because it makes us uncomfortable. We can come up with another answer saying it's a problem because if I'm never going to recover, it's going to affect this, it's going to affect that. That's not how I recommend dealing with this. It's really about feeling what it brings up. So another point is, another perspective on this, you have to just focus on your own recovery. If you want to, so like to go back to my own story here, there was times where I was finding stuff that was helpful, and specifically like the one big shift was realizing that this was a nervous system related thing, that I could recover, and that like the symptoms weren't signs of the virus having fucked up something in my cells and like a lifelong problem. It was a realization that, oh my gosh, this is all nervous system related. Like, yeah, the virus maybe a little bit, but along with all the stress of my life before this, and just not being able to deal with stress, just kept on ramping up my nervous system, and then it started manifesting in these chronic illnesses in the body, because stress has that, chronic stress has that effect on the body, where the nervous system gets stuck in like the fight or flight mode, whatever. So realizing that was like a huge thing, and it was so different to what everybody was saying on the forums. And I started trying to tell people this, but I wasn't recovered. I kind of just understood this, but I hadn't done any of the work, which I talk about. Like intellectual understanding is like the first 5-10%. Then the next 90% is doing the work of feeling what needs to be felt, because that's how recovery happens. So anyways, what became really important for me was, I had to stop trying to make other people recover, and because I wasn't even recovered. So that's, I think, can be a big part of it. It's like, let go of the forums, and then we can kind of feel like, oh, we need to go and tell everybody about this. But everybody's going to have to, like, sure, we can help people, but when they're ready to hear it, like, you can't force somebody to, like, they have to get to that place where they're really willing to start doing their inner work. So yeah, like the only time I started making these videos was like 2 or 3 months after I'd fully recovered. A while back, during my, like halfway through my recovery, I'd made so much progress. Like I had gone from like being terrified of doing any exercise at all and having massive crashes to building myself up and all of that. And I wanted to start sharing information and that kind of thing, but I couldn't. Like I wasn't fully recovered. So eventually, I just completely forgot about that. Wasn't like, oh, I just forgot about it. I made the decision to leave that and focus on my recovery, and then focusing on taking meditation deeper, and then the whole awakening thing of realizing that this goes beyond just healthy and ill. It's like this whole mechanism of reaction and resistance is what's causing all of my suffering in life, like not just on this recovery path. So then just purely focusing on that, and then once I'd fully recovered, kind of just living a little, like doing the things I hadn't done for ages. So, playing sports again, seeing people, socializing for a month or two, and then, I was kind of like in a place, okay, like what do I do with myself now? And then it was kind of time, okay, you know what, I want to start sharing. Now I can help people to recover because I've really dealt with all of my shit. And then it was helpful, like, and then that's where we are now. It's people have been finding it helpful, and that's why I'm here. So, yeah, like to just let go of the forums, and then just the most help that you can be to other people is to sort out your own shit first. And still, even for me, like I'm still focusing on my awakening process of waking up from my unconscious stuff. Even though I'm fully recovered now, there's still reactivity, there's still resistance patterns. And again, like I can see other people struggling with their own things, but the most helpful thing for me, because often you're trying to solve a problem and then you're actually reacting to your own shit. You're not actually helping the person. So yeah, like that's something that I learned from Angelo and some other teachers of just keep waking yourself up, keep doing your inner work, and it will start to help other people like that. So that's my long answer to that one. Fagan Govidsamy. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I got that right. I doubt it. Hi, Kyle. Good to see you doing well, brother. I've been suffering with ME for 13 years. Notice that my symptoms are gradually getting worse. Did your symptoms get worse before you healed? Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, Fagan, sorry you've been struggling for so long. That's a long time. But yeah, absolutely. Like that's why, I didn't struggle with this for like 10 years or something, because it got so like extreme. Like I just completely fixated on this, and I was like, I'll do whatever it takes to get rid of this. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until like absolutely hit rock bottom. I had nowhere left to go. I was like, kind of everything from my life was like not an option anymore. And yeah, I mean, like this was just like a little period where it was like that. Like, anyways, yeah, it had to get worse before I was willing to do the work that I needed to do. Before I was like willing to give up on searching for a miracle recovery solution, all of that kind of stuff, and realize that, this is about practicing meditation and feeling into my body, because what's driving this whole thing is my reaction and my resistances to it. But I was not willing to do that until it got so bad. Like I had to hit rock bottom where I'm not negotiating anymore. Like, today I'm having a really bad crash. I'll rather just watch some TV and distract myself. Like you can't negotiate with life. Like, okay, I meditated yesterday, so like that's, that carries over for today. Like realizing that, yeah, if I really want to recover, I just have to, like, this is on me. You can still do this from a place of compassion and kindness, though, because at the same time, I was being so hard on myself. Like, I was only really able to do the work once I was coming from a place of compassion and kindness. Like, I used to, like, it's funny, this is how we work, where is if we're so fighting ourselves on something, it's not going to work. So for me, like the beginning process was actually, because what's actually happening there is we're resisting feeling something. So like, I have to get this right, I have to do this right, so I don't feel that feeling of failure or whatever. Whereas coming from a place of compassion and kindness, just going like, yeah, this is really difficult what you're going through. Like, it's okay to feel whatever you feel. Like, and then doing like specific compassion related practices of just like welcoming the really things I didn't want to feel, actually reversing that and saying, you know what, no, welcome, you can be here. I want to feel what this feels like. I want to let you, like you can talk to the experience directly. I want to let you express yourself, the fear or the guilt or the shame. Like, no, this is not about making it go away anymore. It's about really feeling it. So, yeah, and then like coming from that kind of a place, slowly everything starts to shift, And then I was able to do the work because I was more coming from a place of embracing the situation, of starting to realize that this is actually a good thing that's happened to me. Like the old way my life was always going to lead to this place. For me, I'm just lucky that it happened really quickly. Like I could have been stuck in that, fighting life and looking for things to make me happy, but not making me happy for a long time. But like it just got so bad where like I was forced to face it all. And then realizing like, oh yeah, this has put me on a completely different path where this goes way beyond just getting rid of symptoms. I'm actually getting the core of what was making me like unhappy the whole time. And that's resisting life, fighting life, trying to control experiences and all of that. So yeah, definitely to go back to your original question, got worse before I got better. So yeah. Okay, let's see. Julian, another question. We're always talking about facing feeling, but how did you do exactly? Sometimes when I meditate, there is nothing except of thoughts. Very hard for me to see feelings in a clean situation like meditation. So, yeah, I mean, often it will come up in like, often there is a feeling there and we're not feeling it. But like, yeah, we don't need to force it to come. It will often just come out through life, So like when something happens where you go to a doctor and then it doesn't go out the way you want to, and then you start feeling sadness or whatever, that's, okay, there, it's come up. Now you can feel it. And often it's there because we just don't realize it, like because we're identifying as it. So to give an example, like for a lot of people, if you just say, just sit down, put away all distractions for an hour, they're not going to want to do that because uncomfortable stuff is going to start coming up. So if you can just meditate and there's nothing uncomfortable, then just keep meditating. If it's getting frustrating, like I'm trying to do this and it's not working, then realizing that, oh, there we go. That's like you don't even need to, like, it can be helpful to label emotion to kind of realize that you were identifying from that place, but it's actually an emotion. So to be like, oh, frustration. But then what's really important is just to feel what feels uncomfortable, really. So yeah, if you're meditating, you don't need to force the emotions to come. Like if you're meditating and it's just very peaceful, then that's fine. Just like feel into that. But if there's lots of thoughts coming up, try and feel into what if stop the thoughts. There's often the thoughts are running over something uncomfortable. I'm trying to think back to, yeah, like for me, it would get really uncomfortable if I was sitting meditating a lot. Well, back when I was really struggling, I didn't want to meditate because it was too uncomfortable. And that was kind of the, that was the emotional stuff. Another thing, though, is this is kind of what Angelo talks about, which is a very relevant point, is when we're so much in the thoughts, it's difficult to do the emotion work. So more important to focus on just identifying with the thoughts. And that's kind of what a first awakening is, realizing that you're not your thoughts, you're not what you thought you were. So he'll often say that rather focus on first awakening, and then you're not identified as your thoughts anymore, and then you can dig into that deeper stuff. And that's kind of how it was for me as well, was I only was able to do the emotional work once I'd been meditating enough to see that I wasn't my thoughts. And then you can do the work, because then you can see what's arising isn't you, that's what needs to be felt. Whereas often before that that can feel like us, like we identify as that. Like, I can't do the emotion work, this doesn't make any sense, I don't know how to do this, there's too many thoughts. We can realize like, oh, that's a thought, that's not me, that's what's coming up. But it's like you need to kind of have a little bit of a shift out of the thought space initially. So I would focus on like Angelo's stuff. I know you've got his book, so he's really the guy to follow on this. That's what the book's all about. So like the inquiry practices of looking for where you're noticing the thoughts from. So, or who are you? Whatever comes up, that's a thought. Where's the actual direct experience of you? Like, oh, I am this, that's a thought. I'm this, that's a thought. I am my name, I am my profession, I am my relationship. Thought. Who is seeing those thoughts? Those are the kind of practices that can help you to get out of the thought identification, and then later on you can do the emotion work. And again, the emotion work just kind of comes up on its own. Like, for me, like when it comes up nowadays, it'll feel like strong resistance. Like, I just want to distract myself. I don't want to sit and meditate. I'd rather watch TV. I'd rather do this. I'd rather do that. Why do I want to do that? Because there's something that I don't want to feel. And when you meditate and take away all distractions, you kind of have to feel it. And again, that's the best thing to do, is to actually feel it. So yeah, I don't know if that helps. The speaking channel. Interesting, thank you. I'm happier if I believe there is a purpose to this, but I have days when I struggle to have positive thoughts. So you see, that's why I say that it's not about finding a belief that makes us comfortable. What I'm teaching from, like, some people want to focus on positive thoughts and that kind of thing, but I made a video on this, my video on the pros and cons of brain retraining, because those kind of courses are about, retraining the brain to only have positive thoughts and that kind of thing. And that can be helpful, that can be a step on the path to break us out of the stuck in the negative perspective. So to realize that, I was kind of making my situation so rough by like continuously feeding these negative thoughts and beliefs. Then you kind of go more to the positive spectrum. But then what eventually happens is you have to start being willing to feel the uncomfortable stuff, because that's the way through. Is that stuff's only uncomfortable because we label it as negative and bad, and I mustn't feel it. And then experience fluctuates. So there's positive times, there's negative times, there's comfortable experiences, there's uncomfortable experience, there's pleasure, there's pain. When we fixate on happiness and comfortable and pleasure, the other side comes as well. And that's what creates the suffering or the struggle, the problems, because it fluctuates, and it's the resistance to the stuff that we label as it shouldn't be here. That's what's uncomfortable, because it just comes, like sadness or fear or confusion or doubt. It just comes, and then we say, no, this mustn't be here, and it's so uncomfortable because we can't get rid of it. And then we have this internal struggle, and and then on a deep level, like, this is what drove this whole thing for me, was there was so much repression of, no, I can't feel that, and it stresses out the nervous system. And I remember feeling like I was in this relationship and I couldn't face the fear of letting go of the relationship because it wasn't working. I just kept on pushing down, like, no, don't feel that. And I remember I would have thoughts sometimes like, geez, I wonder what happens if I live my whole life like just, not being real with myself. What's going to happen? And then life answered me like a year, a couple of months later when but again, because I, in part, the whole chronic illness thing was me starting to be more honest with myself of, no, something's not right. I don't feel right. And then I got stuck in the perspective of a physical illness caused by COVID that's giving me these symptoms. when, and I kind of had to go through that process because we all start there. You feel physical symptoms, you go to the doctor, and you relate it to what's just happened, COVID and all of that, until later on realizing through a long up and down and a crazy path, but it was a journey, realizing that this was all about my resistance to things, and that was what was affecting my nervous system, which is causing the physical symptoms. So the root of it, which is what I often talk about, getting to the root of it, was learning, and this is the practices that I kind of share here, learning to accept and welcome whatever comes up. Because that's getting to the root of it. And then if we just we kind of try and put an antidote on with calm the nervous system a little bit, focus on positive thinking. And again, it can be helpful. I'm not making fun of those practices. It was really helpful for me to a point, but I was still stuck. I would still have massive reaction to the bad days and the bad symptoms and that kind of thing. And then only once I went really deeper, listening to talks on meditation and reading a few books and finding some really good teachers, learning that, this is all internal. This is, the root of it is trying to control. Trying to control. I see you said something else there. I've just left a load of groups as I was getting worse the more I kept reading stuff. I want to be informed, but was noticing I was being led by what I read rather than what I was feeling. Absolutely. That was kind of what we're going back to earlier. It really can drive this process. I remember for me, the more I read other people's experiences, the more I started noticing similar symptoms, because I became more hyper aware of anything that in the past wouldn't have fazed me, but now it's that's, like you said, being led by what you read rather than what you're actually feeling. It starts to form these beliefs and all of that. So that's kind of realizing that, that's kind of that first level of I have to take responsibility of this myself, and I have to be honest with myself of what's actually happening and what's going to be helpful for me. So Ivan, how often and how long per session would you meditate? So it kind of obviously varied a lot throughout my journey. At first, when I first came in contact with meditation, it was do a 10-minute meditation. And I had no idea of the power of it, the deeper side of it, of realizing that it can really get me to the root of this trying to control, this belief in a separate me who has control and can pick and choose experience and all of that. So initially it was just this actually helps my symptoms, so I would 10, 20 minutes a day, and it would help my symptoms, and it was slowly compounding. I noticed I was less reacting on my emotions and that kind of thing. But I wasn't committed to it yet. I hadn't realized, you kind of, once you get the direct taste and experience of how powerful it actually can be and that kind of thing, that's when I really gave myself to this. So to fast forward a little bit, I was meditating, maybe 2 10-minute sessions a day, and then some days I'd skip it because I was feeling too uncomfortable, but then I would crash again because I'm reacting to the symptoms instead of feeling it. And I would do yoga nidras, which is just relaxed body scanning, and then I would do some guided meditation and all of that. But when I actually started recovering, I really got interested in meditation from an intellectual standpoint as well, because this whole time I was getting really curious about, because my whole life was kind of, all that my interests were kind of cut off. I'm interested in sports, I'm interested in relationship and socializing and partying, whatever. This kind of put me into direct, okay, wait, if none of that's going on, I'm not kind of caught up in those worlds anymore, what is what is life actually? What is this whole thing about? Like, like I'm suffering so much. That's kind of when you start to get into touch with those questions. And then eventually that kind of links up with meditation as well. Like, okay, I got interested in philosophy, I got interested in physics, I got interested in those kinds of things. But, reading a lot of heavy intellectual stuff would cause me symptoms. And that was, I was stuck in the cycle of like, yeah, I want to, read a really difficult philosophy book. And then I couldn't. And then realizing that that's all way too intellectual. Like that's thoughts about stuff we've labeled. That's just, direct experience. Like that's taking science to its extreme of real empiricism of, okay, not what do you think is here, what is actually here? Like not making any assumptions, like what is actually here. So to come back to your question, that's really started, I was like, it all kind of came into one of like, meditation is helping me with the suffering that I'm going through. And if I really want to understand life and the universe and all the stuff I was interested in, I was like, and consciousness and all of that, I was like, you got to experience it directly. And then listening to meditation teachers who said they would go on retreats and do hours and hours a day of meditation, and realizing that I wasn't just kind of going to have these realizations through 10 minutes a day of meditation. So eventually I went on a very calm retreat. It was kind of like a 5-day silent retreat. And it was after that, and that was kind of like a big deal. Like there was like flare-ups and stuff because I was stepping out of my comfort zone, and I'd already, was a little bit on the recovery path, but still crashing. But I was less fearful of, doing things. But the reason I committed to this was because I was like, I know that what I'm always trying to do to recover is to calm my nervous system and to not distract myself. So I was like, this 5-day silent retreat is like a 4-hour drive from where I'm staying, and I know that will often cause me a flare-up, and it's completely different environments and all of that. But like, it's 5 days of silence and you're not allowed on your phone. Like, that's what I need to be doing. So long story short, it was after that retreat, and this is the power of retreats, and again, after I did another retreat very recently, is it shatters your beliefs of how long you can meditate. So before the retreat, sometimes I'd really push it and I'd be able to do like a half an hour session, but I was so fixated on like, on the amount of time that I was meditating. Like, like once you go past like 20 minutes, just like focusing on like, when is the meditation going to end? When is the meditation going to end? Like waiting for that bell. After retreat, that one was very chilled compared to the one I did recently. That one was maybe like 3 or 4 1-hour sessions a day. So still way more meditation than I've done, and then some yoga and that kind of stuff. And then when I came back, I was like, it had a massive effect. Like especially you notice it once I came back home and I interacted with my family, I could just see like I wasn't so much in my head. I was more in just what was happening. I was talking to somebody and I was listening to what they were saying without thinking in my head immediately of, are they looking at me? What am I going to say? It was just what was happening. And then the symptoms came back because it was, that's how it goes really, is like once it's a little bit peaceful, then all the other stuff that needs to be felt comes up again. But from then on, I was able to meditate more. I committed to like half an hour in the morning and half an hour in the evening because I knew I could do it. And then eventually I moved to, I was still living at my family, and it's a busy house, like a family of 5, and very active, noisy bunch, like cool. But I knew I needed to face my stuff alone. So I went and I was able to live on my own for a couple of months, and that's when I just fully gave myself to this. I was like, every day I was focusing purely on the things that work. So I was either reading a book about meditation and then meditating, and then like spending time in nature and doing a short walk in nature, and I wasn't distracting myself with other things anymore. So yeah, that's kind of how it led to for me. And then from that point, I was doing like 2 hours 2 hours a day of like fixed meditation. So I had an hour or like a 45 or 50-minute session in the morning and a 45 or 50-minute session in the evening. And then I was doing lots of these little inquiry practices throughout the day. So I was using Sam Harris's Waking Up app and doing a couple of 10-minute sessions throughout the day. And then stopping for like periods of 5 minutes throughout the day, just feeling, just really coming back into what's happening, not interpretation and analysis and concept. So yeah, it really just kind of just gave myself, and I finally embraced it. I was like, I'd been fighting it for so long, you know, I'd like had a breakup, I'd had, you know, like my social life was gone, my like career path, like studies was gone, my like exercise life, and for so long I'd been trying to fight it, like this is so unfair, I need that. And now because I was actually really drawn to this now, I was able to, I was like, yeah, people go on retreat to like Sam Harris, who was very helpful pointer for me early on, went for like 3 years to like Nepal and other retreats and that kind of thing to really experience this, explore this topic. And I was like, I can do the same thing. Like instead of fighting my situation, I have a lot of time where I can't do anything else. But what I can do is meditate. So yeah, that's kind of how it played out for me. So it changed a lot, you know. But what I will say is some kind of retreat is such a powerful catalyst, really. Like it's so difficult to really get into meditation without having been on some sort of retreat, because it's just too easy to avoid and distract. So, I mean, it's completely possible, but it can just be really helpful for yourself is, and like just in whatever your situation is, right? So where you're at, like if somebody, you know, is in a really still a difficult situation where they need to take it easy, then sure, like don't force it. But like just apply this to yourself and see, like speaking to everybody here, if this stuff kind of interests you and you want to take this a bit deeper, I highly recommend find a retreat that's near you. You know, it can be like a 1 day, a 2 day, a 3 day, whatever, like whatever's available. I kind of started researching retreats and I found there was a 5 day, there's not a lot around here, but there was a 5 day one which was very relaxed, and then there was this 10 day Vipassana one, which I did very recently, which is super intense, like 10, 12 hours a day of strict meditation practice. So I only did that once I was recovered, and I really wanted to take this deeper. But start with where you're at, and yeah, Angelo DeLudo, his channel is Simply Always Awake. For anybody who doesn't know, I refer to his work a lot because it was probably the most influential in my recovery. His talks on awakening and getting to the root of your suffering. He released a video recently on retreat, talking about the power of retreat. So go check it out. It was like 2 or 3 days ago. And it's exactly the same as what I'm saying here. Like sustained meditation, it can just kind of really take you so much further than meditating like half an hour a day for like a few months, as opposed to meditating like, you know, that depends on what kind of retreat, but a lot of retreats like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day for a certain number of days. It just really, and just the whole environment of silence and being around everybody that's, you're not kind of fighting life anymore. Like often when we're trying to retreat, trying to meditate at home, it's like you're going against the grain of everybody's, you know, busy, and you're taking time to meditate. Whereas on retreat, that's the sole focus of everybody there. So it has such a massive impact on just this like shared focus. You're really affected by it. So yeah, if you want to take this deeper, retreats, really recommended. You're welcome, Jessica. Anna, hey Anna. You often say that you needed to feel things that your system didn't want to feel. how did you get there? How did you get access to repressed emotion, which was laying beneath a feeling like boredom? So this is a little bit, okay, here's another part of your question. Or you once said that when you noticed that you were thinking about the future or the past, that you immediately knew from what you are distracting yourself. How? Yeah, so that was kind of a lot later on. Like a lot of that is, specifically that last quote is like a recent realization from a lot of meditation practice after retreats of just directly exploring my thoughts and my physical experience for 10 days, 10 hours a day. It became so obvious that anytime I'm in a thought, it's because I'm reacting to a physical sensation. What, like specifically identifying like what am I distracting myself from is not that important. It's like, but so to take this along, like that's really deep along the path. This is kind of what I was sharing with Julian a little bit earlier, was saying that focusing on disidentifying from thoughts is a really important first step, because that's when we get access to the deeper emotional stuff. So it's kind of the same thing we're talking about here is we really first have to get out of the thought identification layer, because boredom is, so like what you mentioned, boredom. So if we dig in a bit, and there's lots of different ways, but like inquiry is a great thing. So like, why am I bored? You know, like, okay, I don't want to sit here any longer. You know, I'm sitting, I'm bored. The only reason we're bored is because it's uncomfortable to be not doing something right now. Like, boredom is already a reaction to the sensation. We're already in the thought about the sensation. So it's like, you know, I'm bored, you know, maybe I should do this, I want to do this, I want to do that. Okay, but wait, like why am I bored? Like, what is boredom? And this is the way, like inquiry practice of getting curious about what, like, why can't I just sit here for an hour? You know, what's the problem with that? And then the thoughts will say whatever, you know, oh, because I need to do this, I need to do that. But it's because it's uncomfortable. So that's what's lying beneath boredom. So that kind of thing can be helpful, but like a more direct, so that's where, like, for me, I started with a lot of like mindfulness meditation, of focusing my attention on a fixed point, like the breath at the nose, and then noticing when my mind wandered, and then coming back, and then my mind wandered, and then coming back. And that's how it goes. And what that does, like, that's a good initial starting point, because you need to build a little bit of concentration to do the other stuff, because otherwise we're just caught in mind wandering 24/7. So I really recommend, and this is what worked well for me, is a kind of focused concentration practice, like picking an object of focus, and the breath at the nose is a really helpful one, setting a timer to meditate, and then noticing when we get distracted, and then coming back and, okay, I'm going to stay with the sensations. And for early on, like, counting can be helpful, like, because it's quite difficult at first. Like, I've been at this for a while now, so I often forget when I first sat to meditate how difficult it was, how much my mind wandered. So yeah, everybody's at a different place. I don't know where they're at, but early on it can be helpful to start with counting, like, you know, breathing in, breathing out, 1. Breathing in, breathing out, 2. And then what's also helpful is to reach 10 and then to start again, because otherwise we can kind of just get like, it can be another trigger for us if we realize 11, 12, oh shit, I was supposed to stop at 10 and start again. We're not very aware if we're just going 12, 13, 200, 500, a million. We can just, the counting can almost start happening automatically. So just, yeah, going from 1 to 10, starting from 1 to 10, 1 to 10 is a good practice, because like, if I think when I'm doing it and then I go 11, 12, I'm not focusing. You know, if I know I'm supposed to stop at 10, why am I suddenly at 15? So those kind of practices can help build some concentration. And then the inquiry we become more aware of what is a thought and what is not a thought. And then I recommend Angelo DeLullo and his inquiry, his YouTube channel, Simply Always Awake, and his book, Awake It's Your. His book is like so comprehensive because it's got everything. It's so good. And then his YouTube channel, obviously it's YouTube videos, so they're on different aspects of the process and that. So his Basics of Awakening and his inquiry playlists are really helpful at learning how to do inquiry. And again, like that, it's going to help you to have that shift out of the thoughts, where then you have the space to do this other work, because we're not purely identified with the thoughts. We can see that that's a thought, it's not who we are. So yeah, I'd start with, we have to do some of these initial practices before we can do some of the deeper ones. We can do emotion work at any stage, and it's helpful to understand this different way of relating to emotions, so that even when we're at this stage where we're still very much in the thoughts, but when an intense emotional experience happens, something goes wrong and it brings up all these emotions, it's somewhere in the back of our mind. Maybe we're like for 5 hours we're reacting to this emotion the way we used to, and then suddenly we remember like, a good way to do emotion work is to feel without reacting. So again, emotion work can be done at all stages, but it's a lot easier to do once we're kind of out of the thoughts a little bit. So like certain practices are going to be more helpful early on, with the background of relating to emotions in a certain way, and doing compassion practices as well. That's helpful throughout. And then, like Angelo's stuff is really, this is what he talks about. So if you haven't checked him out, I highly recommend. He's the man. Stuart, how's it, Stuart? Can you explain the compassion techniques that worked for you? So I kind of I mention it a lot. So it's kind of what I'm talking about. So to just directly talk about my experience, it was I was using a couple of things when I really started doing compassion practices. The one was the Waking Up app. There's a few good, like, short courses with some really good guided meditation. Some guided meditations from really good teachers. That was really helpful. Specifically when I was having like a crash, or was having like a really intense reaction. I've lost it. Like I was doing so well, and now this is happening. Then I would go do some of those guided meditations. The one series I remember is called Compassionate Awareness by Chitindriya. So if anybody does use the Waking Up app, that was one that was really helpful for me. There's it's a cool course, like 5 or 6 meditations, and then the last one is like a 30-minute meditation where it's really just like relax and welcoming whatever comes up. And it was helpful to start with that. And then I actually started doing compassion practices through my brain retraining practice that I didn't even, I wasn't in my mind like, I'm doing compassion practice, but looking back to what I was doing and how that practice evolved. Like I started with the strict practices that they taught, and then kind of just started doing what was working for me and just going with what felt the best. And in the end, I was doing like this deep emotion work without even knowing it. I didn't know what that was called. I was just doing my brain retraining practices. So what I was doing there was the basics of the process that I was taught was, let me just think back to it. It was kind of like, you notice the reaction, you're like, stop. So that, like, I wouldn't recommend this exact process, but just kind of how it would go. Like, stop, don't react that way. And then you kind of start, like, that one focused a lot on the different parts of the brain. So you talk to your fear system in the brain saying, it's okay, it's safe. And then you kind of coach yourself and be like, you got this, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, what happened, like how this practice evolved for me was what really was working for me was those times when I was talking to my brain and myself and saying like, it's okay, you got this, like you're safe, you know, I love you, like that kind of thing. I love you, you're safe. To different parts of my body, like wherever the symptoms were coming up, I would say that, I love you, it's okay. And then there was still lots of resisting and being like, okay, I must feel this, I mustn't feel that, because that's kind of, like as I said, the brain retraining was really helpful for me. And they're kind of on the right path, but it's easy to get caught up in the picking and choosing experience and fighting experience, because it's kind of a little bit along those lines. But anyways, what eventually my practice was, and again, that was what was really helpful from the brain retraining, is it committed me. I'd spent like a lot of money on this course, and they said do this an hour, like 2 hours a day. If you don't, like maybe it won't work. So I was like, it really forced me to start doing the work. I was like, I'm going to make this work. So like every morning I would start the day, and what I ended up doing was I was recording myself, because sometimes I'd play it back to myself. It would be helpful. In the end, I didn't need to do that, but it really committed me to as well. Like I was busy recording myself, so for like half an hour, 45 minutes, I would do this practice, and it was eventually it just became like saying like, I love you, I accept you, I welcome you, kind of feeling into what was scary, what was uncomfortable, what was difficult. It's okay, like you can be here, I accept you, I love you, and then starting to feel into the body, trying to spread this feeling of love throughout the body. So like, I was focusing a lot on the brain, because that's what that course focused on, was like feel into your like limbic system. That's what's reacting. That's kind of what's causing all the symptoms, is the fear system in your brain reacting like this. So like, you're safe. I love you. Like you can relax. You've been working so hard, but you can relax. You can take a break. It's okay. Yeah, that's really what I was doing. I didn't even realize it was like I was doing this compassion work, and I was kind of focusing on this object as a part of my brain, and I was relating to that. But I was kind of sending myself these feelings of acceptance, of compassion, of, you know, it's okay. Like, you don't need to work so hard. Yeah, and then if feelings of love or you know, feel like some warmth in the chest or wherever, then kind of just focusing on that, and then talking to that loving feeling itself can kind of like compound it, saying like, I love you, and I really feel this as deeply as possible. Like, I love you. Like, how can I, like, imagine if I was saying this to the person I loved in the world the most, like really, like how can I express the most amount of love, and then like saying that to itself. So, and yeah, I would start doing that along with my meditation practices, and it was really powerful. Like, everything started calming down. I wasn't fighting everything so much. Whatever came up, it was such an easy solution. It wasn't like, what do I do about this? It was like, I know exactly what to do. I welcome this. I meet this with love. I meet this with acceptance. There's no like, for this experience, it's bad. I need to do something to get rid of it. It's like, no, whatever comes up, I can meet it the same way. So yeah, doing quite a bit of practice in that, like through my brain retraining of like doing a couple of sessions of that every day, it made it easier and easier to do it when the difficult stuff came up. And as I said, the guided meditations on the Waking Up app were helpful as well. So I hope that answers your question, Stuart. Matt, hey Matt, welcome. Hi Carl, good to see you sharing your wisdom again. Always happy to, Matt. It's a lot of fun. Fagan, much appreciated. Thank you, Carl. I'm glad, Fagan. Thanks for your question. Yeah, a lot of these I only see way after I answered the question, so I can't even remember. But Julian, you're welcome. Ivan, you're welcome. I'm considering retreat as well, although connected to yogic practices too, but all of this is connected. Absolutely. And that's the thing, the yoga practices can be really helpful as well. That initial retreat I went on wasn't like a pure meditation retreat. It had a lot of yoga kind of stuff as well. And funnily enough, like the yoga stuff can be really helpful with, I really recommend the meditation from the perspective of being able to become aware of our thoughts as thoughts. Like the power of that shift is like it's hard to grasp because we're in those thoughts until we've had that shift, and then it's just such a different perspective, and it just changes everything. So then that's awakening, initial awakening. Like this goes much deeper. Like someone can have that shift. Oh, I'm done. No, that's just the beginning. But that in conjunction with like yoga practice and stuff can be super great together. So that kind of takes us out of the identity and the thought and the beliefs, and we can see that as thought and that. And then the yoga practices, just speaking from my personal experience, like if somebody has more experience in yoga, that's cool. But the yoga practices I found are really helpful for regulating like stuff in the body. So specifically now that I'm doing a lot of meditation and going really deep with it and having some really cool insights and shifts and that kind of stuff, a lot of like energetic stuff comes up. And again, in the past, that was all labeled as like a crash, but now it can just be, it's like it's just like this intense energy in the head or whatever. Sometimes it comes out as pain. And yoga and breathing exercises, and there's another thing that I've been doing called TRE, which is tension and trauma releasing exercises, is so helpful to process this kind of stuff through the body. So, I was doing like pure meditation, and then meditation in combination with these, with yoga and these other, and breathing exercises and that kind of stuff. It's a really good combination because it helps you to process the weird energy stuff that goes on. And that's a lot of what's going on in, there's so many different perspectives to talk about this from. So like we can talk about it from the nervous system and the physical things that are causing the symptoms. But at the same time, if we go deeper and deeper, it's like just talking from my own experience, these kind of things that are happening now purely as a result of meditation is exactly what was happening with my crashes and that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously it's way less intense. It's just like, a little bit and it passes. But this is kind of what I was reacting to and labeling before I knew anything about the awakening process and these kind of shifts that can happen and all of that. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Like when I first found out about this, that a lot of what's happening is like people start going through this kind of awakening process without knowing it, and then the mind reacts into what it does know, and that's like physical symptoms and illness and whatever, and then we get stuck there. And I'm not speaking for everybody, like a lot of this is like stress and all of that kind of thing, but it's just people I've worked with as well, like some people come from very different places, like some people are already, they're specifically digging up their traumas and stuff, and then it comes out as these intense physical symptoms, but they know that's what it is. So yeah, it's all kind of the same thing. But yeah, retreat with yogic stuff can be great as well. So I recommend, if you can, do it. Do it, man. Anna, thank you so much, Kyle. That was really helpful. I'm really glad, Anna. You're welcome. Very welcome. Simon, what's up? Hi, Kyle. I'm holding space for my emotions. There are the everyday feelings of loss, fear, grief, etc. Then there is more historic emotions. I have awareness of past and new awareness comes, but in a way it feels endless. Did you reach a point where you felt like you'd really cleared a lot of historic emotion and that helped was liberating you? Yeah, so Simon, this goes deep. Like I know just from your recent comments that you've had some shifts recently, and that's kind of like first awakening. Probably I remember a while back you said I don't know your personal experience, but you became aware that you're not your thoughts, and that was like a massive insight. And then it starts the emotion stuff, and as you say, it's kind of like historic emotion, and then that's the next thing, is going through all of this emotion, and this is where Angelo's the man. Like he's all the way there. I'm still on the path. Yeah, and that's what retreat was so helpful for me. Was I was doing a lot of this kind of work, but I was distracting myself a lot at home, and because I was now recovered from the chronic illness, I could do anything again. I could exercise, I could socialize, and whatnot. And it was a kind of a phase I needed to go through, and then it was like, okay, I want to really dig deep and take this deeper. So yeah, retreat was really, a lot of shifts happened as well, where I kind of got to the core of some things again, and then always referring back to Angelo's videos of like, what's the next thing to kind of focus on. So yeah, I would recommend, like, there does come a point like where there's just an irreversible shift that happens. Yeah, so just keep doing what you're doing, man. You're in a good place. Like working through that emotion, and then what you said earlier, where your recent comment of just dropping everything when something happens. Like, just keep doing that. Like, yeah, like when we get back into the head of like, that's when we're back in the thoughts analyzing this process. Like, just keep going back to dropping. And then we're like, oh, it feels endless. When am I going to reach that point where it all goes away? Well, that's us reacting to what's here again. Like on my retreat, I was like, this is it, man. I'm going to give myself to this completely. I'm going to, reach that point where it's all, I've worked through it all. But it's not about that, because that's just another form of seeking. That was just me resisting what was here. It was like, I want to reach a place where all of this goes away. So I really like committed, and then the next step was realizing like, oh my gosh, no, it's not about that. It's about, I just keep facing what's here. Then you'll get to the point where there's no more problems, because you just keep facing what's here. So that's my take on it. But I really, Angelo's stuff's really good. His consciousness playlist is great. Like, it's really, it really helps to just settle into that place where there's just pure consciousness. There's no thoughts or identity or whatever. He's got some really good pointers on that, and then you just stay there. You just stay there, because as soon as you're thinking of something to do, that's back in the thoughts, and then the emotional stuff's going to come, and then you feel your way through it. So it becomes very simple, but it's really key that there's still work to do. But you're in a good place, man. You're in a good place. And also check out his. He's got a free app. I think it's called Simply Awake, with guided meditations. And there's some really same like consciousness ones are great. And then you just kind of stay there. That's where the self-inquiry and everything is taking you. It's taking you back to where is the thing that's reacting to everything, and then it's kind of just this like thoughtless space or whatever. But yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing good work. Cool. We had a lot of good questions there. Thanks, everyone. If there's anybody else has any questions or anything they want to share, or hang around for a few more, and maybe we'll do a meditation to close as well. So I'll give it a couple minutes. well, maybe not a couple of minutes. I'll give it a little bit. Anybody want to say something, ask some questions, go for it. But yeah, we touched on some good stuff there. Good stuff. Yeah, I just to everyone that's still watching, I really recommend trying, because, so I was talking about meditation practices and then the other practices that are helpful to deal with the physical stuff that comes up with meditation. And that's what a lot of us that went through this process are dealing with. So the whole chronic fatigue, long COVID thing is dealing with that physical stuff. And the meditation is the key aspect to see what's driving it. It's like essential to see that, you know, we're reacting with this and this and this. But I really recommend trying TRE. It's I just started doing it myself recently because I could feel there's a lot of like still stuff coming up and resistance to it. And in meditation was great, but I was doing so much meditation that there was a lot of energetic stuff coming up. And I've heard people talk about this TRE. And what it really is basically you do like a couple of exercises to to fatigue your legs a little bit. So not like it's actually it's a great thing for people who are with chronic fatigue or long COVID. It's probably it's very mild. It's like you stand and you stretch your leg like this for a little bit, and you stretch your leg like that for a little bit, and then you lie on the floor and you kind of close your legs in the slope position, but they start to shake when you're doing it. And it was funny, I used to, when I was doing yoga practices quite a bit a while back, like that was the first kind of exercise that I tried. There was a certain yoga posture where my legs would just start shaking when I started trying to go from this one position and closing them. And that's what TRE is. So you're kind of activating that tremor mechanism where your legs just start like shaking like that, like on their own. And then it's incredible what that do. It kind of helps the body to release like stored trauma and tension. It's incredible. Like I'll have some tension in my body and then I'll do that, and you really just kind of let it shake how it shakes. And then, hey, the electricity's back in South Africa. Let it shake how it shakes, and then afterwards, just so much release through the body. So I really recommend that for everybody that's going through chronic illness and that kind of stuff. The TRE, those trauma tension release and exercises, along with meditation. Like I talk a lot about meditation and the deep getting to the roots of it, but this is a really cool practice for helping to process the stuff that's coming up, the physical stuff. And I've spoken a bit more about, like I know that people do EFT tapping as well, which is, it's a similar thing. You're like tapping on certain points and that helps to release tension in the body and emotional stuff. These kind of practices are really good conjunction with meditation. Yoga, but the TRE is great because it's just activating this like this tremor mechanism in our body, which helps us to process traumas and that kind of stuff, which is a lot of what's driving all this nervous system problems. So yeah, just sharing that. That's really helpful. And I was doing those kinds of things without even realizing it. You know, I would do some, like there were some yoga postures that would just really feel like I was releasing some stored energy. Like I wasn't even thinking about it like that, but it would just, tension would start leaving and that kind of stuff, and like stretches and that kind of thing. So some simple physical stuff like that can be so helpful as well. And then I would do these things I spoke about in the last one, but this like lymphatic drainage massage, which was just kind of like gently like stroking through the head, and that was so helpful for, again, I didn't know what it was actually doing. Like the theory behind it was like it's moving like lymphatic fluid, whatever. It made me feel really relaxed. And looking back now, it was like helping to move all this tension from my head to just kind of release it and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really emphasize the not trying to make things happen, like breathing techniques and that kind of stuff. Like when I'm talking about meditation, it's not about controlling the breath, but there are breathing techniques that in conjunction can help to release stuff as well. So that's just another side of it, I suppose. Yeah. Check it out. Anthony, hey man. Looking well, dude. Thanks. How are you, Anthony? Kwame Green, that's exactly what I'm talking about, the lymphatic drainage massage. I think the technique I was doing was based on the parent technique. And again, like, it doesn't matter what the, like I was looking too much into it, like, I don't know if this makes scientific sense or whatever. It's really helpful. So yeah, and you say it's having positive effect for you. That's kind of what I was doing as well. And it's a great, that in conjunction with like meditation practice and becoming aware of our beliefs and all of that, it's a great combination. Like that's more, it's really nice because it's more of a, so like a symptom relief. Yeah, so it works. It's helpful. It helped me too. Cool. Anthony, I think you just joined. We're about to finish up. Oh, there's another question. I'm okay, man. My trajectory is still in the right direction. Managing a lot more each month. Having some rough flare-ups, but doing my best to sit with it. Good work, man. Yeah, it's how it goes, hey. Yeah, definitely watch the replay. There were some good questions asked here. A lot of important stuff came out. So, good idea. Yeah, just keep at it, man. You're doing good work. And yeah, just remember, like the flare-ups are part of it, and yeah, it's all that deep inner work. Yeah, it's just it's all that willingness to do the work. You'll just keep going in the right direction. Like the more if we're doing the work, you're going in the right direction. Like, and I know you. I've spoken to you a couple of times. You're doing the work. So keep at it. Yeah, cool. I'm here to answer more questions if there are any. For anybody that's just joined, you can pop a few questions. But if there's not any questions, we'll just do a short meditation and then call it there. Keep up the videos, helping lots, says Anthony. Definitely, man. I'm glad they're helping. And yeah, whenever there's some comments or something which feels like it's good to make a video on, yeah, I'm glad it's helping. I enjoy it. Hey, Linda, welcome. Cool. You are in time for meditation. Okay. All right, so there's no more questions, so we're going to do some meditation. So if you want, you can just, if you've got some practice that's working for you, just go ahead with that. I'll maybe do a little bit of guided, so just kind of give a little bit of guidance, and then we can maybe just sit for a bit and feel through it. So yeah, feel free to do whatever feels most comfortable for you. So for everybody that's joining us for meditation, let's start by closing the eyes if that's comfortable for you, and then just taking a few deep breaths, just starting by relaxing the body a little bit. We've been asking questions and talking and discussing concepts and stuff. And now we're just going to go towards the body, and it really helps to start with a little bit of relaxing. So you can do few deep breaths and then just feel into the body and relax a bit. And then you can just bring your attention to the sensations of breathing. So just kind of wherever you're feeling it most prominently, in the belly, in the chest, the rising and falling. The breath moving at the entrance of the nose or the mouth. Just start to rest your attention on those sensations. And remembering the foundation of our meditation is we're not trying to change anything. We're not trying to make anything happen. We're just feeling what's here. We're not trying to change the breath. We're not fighting against anything. Just whatever we're feeling, we just explore that. So we start with the breath. Just feel the sensations just as they are. And if the mind wanders, that's okay. Just notice that your mind was thinking, that there was thoughts, and then bring your attention back to the breath. And see if you can follow the entirety of the breath. It's a great way to explore the sensations at a deeper level. Can you follow the breath all the way from the beginning of the inhale to the pause between the inhale and the exhale, all the way from the beginning of the exhale to the pause between the exhale and the inhale. And just try to rest into the sensation of breathing. Don't force it. Just in a relaxed, calm manner. Just rest into the sensations. And then if the thoughts come, we don't push the thoughts away. If we're lost in the mind and there's just so many thoughts and it feels like can't focus on the breath, that's fine. What we can actually do is we can, instead of trying to get rid of thoughts, thoughts can be our entry points. We can start to get closer and closer to the thoughts. We can really explore the experience of thought itself. So if there's thoughts passing through, just slow down and see if you can hold whatever thought comes. See if you can just hold it there. And then start to get closer and closer to the thought itself. Get really curious of feeling what a thought is made out of. So you kind of, we're having thoughts, but what does that experience actually feel like? And again, we're not forcing anything to happen here. We're just kind of leaning into where it feels like thinking is happening. So maybe this isn't something we've done before. And there's not a specific location we get to. We're going towards the space of thoughts. Where does it feel like thoughts are? And then you start feeling into what that feels like. And if the thoughts come, that's perfect. Just get closer and closer to the thought. And really start to explore what is the texture of the thought? What is the sensation of thought? And then you just rest with that. And if there's movement of that thought stuff, the next thought comes. And again, just get closer to it. And then you rest. Just really exploring the thoughts. Not the contents of the thoughts. Doesn't matter what the thoughts are about. What is making up the thoughts? We're not looking for conceptual answers. We're looking to experience. And sometimes we get caught in the thoughts, and then we just stop, hold that thought, and get closer. feel into it. It really starts to feel like a stopping. We're not doing, we're not making, we're just stopping and staying with that experience of thought as an experience itself. And notice anything saying, am I doing this practice right? This doesn't make sense. How do I do this? There we go. There's your thought. Explore that. So it really doesn't matter what thought comes. Just feel into it. And then all we're doing is we're just having alertness, a relaxed alertness for when the next thoughts stir. And then if we get caught in it, we're alert for that happening. And we start to feel into it again. And then the thoughts start to feel like movements of consciousness or movements of this thought stuff. And if we're ever unsure of what's a thought and what's not a thought, how do I find the thought? Whatever is not happening right now is a thought. So, if there's anything going on in the mind that's not actually what's happening right now, that is a thought. And just get closer to that thought. And what we do is we just keep feeling into it. Like we're putting a magnifying glass on a physical object, we do that with what feels like thought. You can start to explore the feeling of where it feels like you're observing thoughts from. The more we feel into the thought stuff, the more it's just one experience. And if this brings up more thoughts, keep noticing thought, stopping, feeling. And then the boundary between a thinker and thought might start to soften, and it just feels like this experience of thought stuff. It's just and if it gets calmer, there's not a lot of thought, that's absolutely fine. Don't need to make anything happen. It's really just a slowing of that mechanism of making things happen. Really just coming to rest. Rest into the sensations. And just being alert for the next thought. Don't push it away. Go straight towards it. And then as we finish off this meditation session, just realize that we're in contact with this space all the time. Throughout our day, no matter what's happening, we're always in contact with this thought space. There's always thoughts happening. And we can start to get curious less about the content of the thoughts, but you can start to more and more, whenever throughout your day, if you become aware that you're thinking, you realize you're completely mind-wandering, not present with what's happening in this moment, then we can start to touch into this. What is that thought space? Where does it feel like thoughts are happening? What does it feel like they're made of? What is that sensation? And we can just start to touch into this more and more whenever we realize that we're in the thoughts. So it's really, thoughts don't need to be a problem anymore. They're our entry points to take us deeper, to just go straight towards the thought. Don't worry about its content. What's making up the thoughts? And just, we can keep exploring this. And if you can do this alongside any other meditation practice you're doing. If you notice you're doing meditation practice and the thoughts are coming, often we push away, but now we can get really curious and just go there. And then often what will start to happen is the mind will get quieter because we're no longer pushing and pulling on thought. So the thought stuff, it's like a massive ocean, and there were all these little waves that were coming up, and we were fixating on the waves. But as we start to explore actually the thought stuff, it starts to calm, and then we just rest in that quiet space. And then if the thoughts come, notice it, and then just keep. You just explore kind of the contours of thought. So the thought space is moving. There's thoughts happening. Feel into it, and it eventually begins to settle. You're not making it settle. You're just noticing the thoughts, feeling into the thoughts, and then you just stay there. And you can just stay there. So we can keep doing that. Okay. Hope everybody enjoyed that. We'll end it there. So thanks everybody for joining, for asking your questions. A lot of good questions came up today. A lot of good stuff. And keep up with the meditation, doing the work. All right. Space. Sorry, dude. We're finishing off. Cool. Thanks, everyone, for joining. It was lovely to have all of you here. If there's any final questions, I'll hang around for a little bit. Otherwise, I'll see you all in the next one. Yeah, I'll put a replay up as usual. So if you just got here and you missed most of it, just go watch the replay. There was a lot of good stuff that will be helpful for lots of people. So yeah, if you missed it, definitely check out the replay. All right, looks like there's no final questions. So we will finish off there. Cheers, everybody. Good luck. Thank you for joining.